Somebody's walking toward you. You've never seen them before. Nobody in your group has. There's no word for what they are yet. Not friend, not enemy, not neighbor. Just a person, standing where a person shouldn't be. So what happens next? That's the one thing out here you can't read. A lion, you understand. A lion's hungry, or it isn't. Weather you can read. Tracks you can read. You've spent your whole life learning to read every dangerous thing in this valley. But this one is carrying a plan, and you can't see it. It might be the worst thing that ever happens to your family. Or the best. So what decided which? Now most people already have an answer to this. And it's a good answer. It's just not the one that matters. Because for most of the time humans have existed, we weren't the only ones. Go back 50,000 years. Neanderthals, right across Europe and Western Asia. Denisovans somewhere out east. We have a finger bone and a couple of teeth. On one Indonesian island, a kind of human about a meter tall, hunting pygmy elephants with tools they made themselves. 6 or 7 kinds of people sharing a planet. So when you ask how dangerous it was to meet another human, that's the meeting everybody pictures. Us, them, 2 different species face to face. And we know roughly how that went, because of where their DNA ended up. If your family comes from outside sub-Saharan Africa, somewhere between 1 and 4% of you is Neanderthal. Some people carry Denisovan on top of that. That's not in a museum, that's in you, which tells you something a skull never could. Groups that are wiping each other out don't also have children together. So it wasn't a war from start to finish. Not everywhere, not always. And that's where this story usually stops. 2 kinds of human, one walks away, roll credits. Except there's a bone in a cave in Iraq that won't let it end there. We'll get to it. First, what did happen to them? Mostly, nothing dramatic. We had more people. Our networks reached further. So when one valley failed, somebody 200 kilometers away already knew what to do. The climate kept lurching, and we brought something that leaves no mark on a bone at all. A person walking into Neanderthal country didn't need to be carrying a weapon to be carrying death. New people meant new diseases, in both directions. Nobody had to be a villain. One group only had to be slightly better at getting food out of the same landscape, for a few thousand years. The arithmetic does the rest. And now, the bone. A cave in northern Iraq. A Neanderthal rib with a wound in it. The angle points downward. The damage matches something light, thrown from a distance, the kind of weapon our side had. He's about 45,000 years old, which is exactly when we were in that region. That's the best reading of it. Not a confession, but it's there. So, yes, at least once, it went badly. Now hold that, because there's a problem with the whole answer. They were already gone. For the last 30,000 years, there has been exactly one kind of human on Earth, which means every question about danger from here is a question about your own species. So let's go and look at one. Northern Spain. A rock shelter. Archaeologists pull out the remains of at least 338 people. Not a cemetery, a pile. Mixed in among them, 52 flint arrowheads, and you can tell those weren't gifts for the dead. Everyone is chipped at the tip. The particular damage a stone point takes when it hits something hard, fast. Those arrowheads weren't buried with these people. They were in them. Then somebody counted the skulls. 107 head injuries. And here's the number this whole video turns on. 59 of them had healed. 59 times, somebody took a blow to the head, hard enough to leave a permanent dent in the bone, and then got up and walked around. For years, some of them. That tells you 2 things at once, and they pull in opposite directions. This was survivable, and it kept happening, to the same people. There's one more thing in those bones, and it's easy to walk past. A third of them show the mark that hunger leaves in a skull. In the children, it's more than half. So this wasn't one terrible afternoon. This was a community that had been short of food for a very long time. Hold on to that. It's the answer, and we're not ready for it yet. Because first, how does anybody know a wound healed? Bone is alive. Break it, and it doesn't just glue itself back together. It grows. New bone comes in rough, porous, slightly the wrong shape, and it stays visibly different for the rest of your life. So a healed injury isn't only an injury. It's a clock. Rough and swollen? Weeks. Smoothed down and remodeled? Years. A wound with no healing at all is the one that killed you. So you can stand over a 300-year-old grave or a 7,000-year-old one and say, this man was hit here and lived another decade. This woman was hit here and didn't see the next morning. The arrowheads work the same way. A stone point used for cutting wears down slowly along its edges. A stone point that hit bone at speed breaks at the tip. Different damage, different cause, and you can tell them apart under a lens. People have even fired replica points into carcasses to check which kind of wound comes from a thrown weapon and which comes from a stab at arm's length. That's how we know the angle in that Iraqi rib means what we think it means. So we can be specific. We know they were shot. We know roughly how hard. We know who lived and who didn't. And then the ground goes quiet. Because a bone can't tell you who did it, or why, or whether these two had ever met before. Everything past that point is us reading, which is exactly why the next site is still being argued about. Kenya. The edge of a lake, much bigger then than it is now. 10,000 years ago, 27 people died here. 6 of them were small children. 1 was a teenager. 1 woman was heavily pregnant. Several have crushed skulls. 1 still has a stone point sitting by the head. And nobody was buried. They were left exactly where they fell. The people who dug it read that as a raid. Others aren't sure they all died on the same day. That argument is still running. The bones will take you that far and no further. Now move forward 3,000 years and northwest into Germany. 34 people, men, women, children, killed with blows to the head from stone axes and put in a pit. This one, though, has a detail that turns it from a massacre into a story. The chemistry in their teeth records the water they grew up drinking, and it says these 34 came from 3 different groups. So this wasn't one village losing a fight. That's strange enough. But here's the part that sits with you. There are no local women among the dead. They're just not there. Somebody took them. And this isn't a one-off. The same pattern turns up at other sites. The same few centuries, the same part of Europe. So that's the picture. Meeting another human could get you killed, repeatedly, across tens of thousands of years. Except there's something in the ground that refuses to fit that picture at all. A camp in what's now the Czech Republic, 27,000 years ago. And among the ordinary stuff, 3 things that have no business being there. Seashells from a coast 400 kilometers to the south. Flint from the north, 200 kilometers the other way. This camp sat where 2 of those chains crossed. None of these people had ever seen the sea. And here's what that actually means, because it's easy to hear trade and picture a market. Nothing walks 400 kilometers in one go. It moves in stages, hand to hand, camp to camp, over years. Which means every single link in that chain was 2 groups of strangers meeting and it going fine. Not once, hundreds of times, for generations. And ask what they were actually getting. You cannot eat a shell. You can't hunt with one, or burn it, or build with it. What you're buying is the person on the other end of it. Because a shell in your hand says somebody 400 kilometers away knows your name. And if your valley fails, if the herds don't come, if the river drops, you know exactly which way to walk and who'll take you in. That's not jewelry, that's insurance. So now we've got a contradiction, and both halves are sitting in the ground. Pits full of people killed by their neighbors, and trade routes that only work if it kept going right for hundreds of years, which means the question we started with was the wrong question. It was never how dangerous was a stranger, it's what made the difference. And you've already seen the answer, 4 times. Go back and look at what those places had in common. First, was there anything worth taking? You can't raid people who own nothing. A group carrying what it can lift is a bad target. A village with a grain store is a very good one. Second, could you walk away? If you're still moving, a fight is the stupidest option available. You leave. But once your food is in the ground and it isn't ripe yet, leaving costs you the whole year. So you stand there. Third, had you met before? That's the shells. A stranger with a name is not a stranger. Fourth, what kind of year was it? Remember those hungry children in the Spanish rock shelter? Nobody there had been eating well for a long time. And a hungry year moves everything up 1 level. The neighbors you traded with in a good season are the only people nearby with food in a bad one. Nothing about them changed. The year changed. And you can watch this working in the present too. Anthropologists have followed groups still living by hunting and gathering, and counted what people actually die of. In one, more than half of all deaths come from violence between people. In others, same way of life, different place. It's a small fraction of that. Same species, same tools, opposite answers. So it was never a question about what people are like. It's a question about what they're standing on. How dangerous was it to meet another human? Wrong question. 4 dials, something worth taking. Somewhere to run, someone you know, and the year you're having. One way, a trade. The other, a pit. Same 2 people. You'll pass 1,000 strangers this week. Never look up. That took 10,000 years. A stranger was never the dangerous thing. Being strangers was.